Hello and welcome, everyone. If you're studying O-level sociology, you're in exactly the right place. In this explainer, we're doing a deep dive into the sociology of the family. We're going to cover absolutely everything you need to know, from the basic definitions all the way to those complex debates about social change that you'll definitely need for your exams.
So here's our game plan. We'll kick things off by defining the key family structures. Then we'll look at why they vary so much across cultures. After that, we'll get into the big sociological debates, check out some alternatives to the family, and wrap up by looking at how marriage itself is changing. All right, first things first. Let's get the fundamentals down. We're going to start by exploring the different types of families that sociologists see as the basic building blocks of any society. Now, this is the one you probably picture when someone says the word family. It's that classic image. And it was a functionalist sociologist, George Murdoch, who argued way back in 1949 that this two-generation unit was, in fact, a universal social group. He believed it was absolutely essential for a stable society. Now, as we're about to see, that idea has been seriously challenged, but it's a really important place for us to start. Okay, so on the flip side of the nuclear family, we have the extended family. This structure goes way beyond just parents and kids. It brings in a whole network of other relatives. We're talking grandparents, aunts, uncles, you name it, all living either together or very nearby. Now, people used to think of this as something from the past, but honestly, it's still incredibly important all over the world. What's really interesting is that extended family isn't just one thing. It's got variations. So a vertically extended family is tall. It goes up and down through 3 or more generations. Think of grandparents, parents, and kids all under one roof. A horizontally extended family, on the other hand, stretches sideways to include relatives from the same generation, like your aunts and uncles. Then there's the modified extended family, which is super common today. That's where relatives live apart but stay in really close contact. And finally, you have this great term, the beanpole family. It's exactly what it sounds like, long and thin. As people live longer but have fewer children, you get these family trees with many generations alive at once, but with only a few people in each.
Of course, it doesn't stop there. Other family types have become much more visible in modern societies. You've got lone parent families, which are now more likely to be formed because of separation or divorce rather than the death of a parent. Then there are reconstituted families. You probably know them as stepfamilies. This is where new partnerships create these really complex and interesting new family ties. And finally, same-sex families are gaining more social and legal recognition all around the world.
And this really highlights a key sociological point. Families change over time. They have a life cycle. For instance, parents become an empty nest family once their kids grow up and move out. But sometimes those kids come back, and that's what we call a boomerang family, often because of things like university costs or trying to save for a house. And lastly, we're seeing more childless families, which includes both couples who can't have children and those who make the choice to be child-free. Now, this is absolutely crucial to remember. In sociology, we're not here to say one type is better than another. We're here to analyze. And as you can see, every single family structure has its own trade-offs. The nuclear family might be able to move easily for a job, but they can also become quite isolated. The extended family, on the other hand, has this incredible support system built in, but maybe you don't get a lot of privacy. Getting a handle on these different strengths and weaknesses is what sociological analysis is all about. So we've got the basic structures down. Now for the bigger question, why are they all so different? Let's zoom out and look at the incredible diversity of family life, not just around the globe, but even within one single country. This term right here, family diversity, is central to everything we're talking about. It's simply the idea that there's this huge range of family types out there. It's a concept that really pushes back against the idea that there's one single, normal, or correct way to be a family. Instead, it shows us how families are shaped by things like culture, class, and ethnicity. This is a fantastic way to see that global diversity in action. The sociologist Göran Thurborn identified 7 major family systems across the world. You'll see the word patriarchal pop up a lot. That just means a system where men hold the power. But notice how different they are. For example, compare the Christian European system, which focuses on monogamy, with the sub-Saharan African system, where polygamy is much more common. This gives you a brilliant snapshot of just how varied family life can be. Okay, so let's take that theory and apply it. Let's look at Niger in West Africa. It fits perfectly into Thurborn's sub-Saharan African model. You see a really high fertility rate, which makes sense when you need large extended families to work on farms. You also see the cultural acceptance of polygamy and traditions of early marriage. It's a perfect real-world example of how these big sociological ideas actually play out on the ground. But it's so important to remember that family diversity isn't just about comparing different countries. It happens within societies too. And two of the biggest drivers for that are social class and ethnicity. For example, classic studies of the British working class found a huge reliance on those modified extended families for support. And of course, different ethnic groups often have very distinct cultural ideas about things like family size or the roles of men and women.
So we've established that family diversity is a fact, but here's the million-dollar question. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? This is a massive debate in sociology, and we're going to look at two completely opposing views, the New Right and the postmodernists. And this slide just nails the core conflict. On one side, you've got the New Right, who look at the decline of the traditional nuclear family and see a serious social problem. On the other side, you have the postmodernists, who are basically throwing a party for diversity. They see it as a fantastic sign of individual freedom and choice.
Let's dig into the New Right argument a bit more. They have a specific list of things they're worried about. They point to the rise of lone parent families, more couples living together without getting married, the impact of feminism, and how easy it is to get a divorce. In their view, all these trends weaken the stable nuclear family, and they argue this leads to what they call dysfunctional families that don't socialize children properly. But the postmodernists see it completely differently. They argue that we're in a whole new era where those old, strict rules about family life have just dissolved. In this postmodern world, people are free to build their own families and relationships based on what works for them, on what gives their life meaning. So for them, diversity isn't a crisis at all, it's liberation. This postmodern idea of choice leads us perfectly into our next topic. What about living arrangements that aren't traditional families at all? Because let's be honest, not everyone lives in a family household, and that's a growing trend. One of the biggest shifts we're seeing in many societies is just how many people are living by themselves. And it's driven by a few different things. We have more older people living longer, especially widows. We have a lot of young adults who are putting off marriage to focus on their career or education. You have more people who are choosing to prioritize their career over a relationship. And, of course, with higher rates of divorce, more people find themselves living alone. And this concept is a perfect example of that postmodernist idea in action. Friends as family, sometimes called chosen families. It's when people build these incredibly strong, supportive networks with their friends that function just like a traditional family. They provide all the emotional and practical support you'd expect from kin, which really shows how people are actively creating their own sense of belonging today. Okay, for our final section, we're going to zoom right in on marriage itself. It's an institution that can feel like it's been the same forever, but sociologically, we know that's not true. It takes all kinds of forms, and it's constantly changing. Here we can see a really fundamental split in how partnerships get started. In an arranged marriage, the decision isn't made by the couple, it's made by their families. It's a collective decision that often prioritizes things like status or property. A love marriage, on the other hand, is all about the individual choice of the two people involved, based on romance and affection. It reflects a completely different set of cultural values. Now, while monogamy, having one partner at a time, is what many of us are used to, it's not the only model. The practice of having more than one spouse is called polygamy, and it comes in two types. Polygyny is when one man has multiple wives, and this is the more common form globally. Polyandry, where one woman has multiple husbands, is incredibly rare. The classic example is from parts of Tibet, where it had a very specific purpose: to stop the family's land from being split up between sons. So we've covered a lot of ground, from basic structures and global diversity to the big debates and the changing nature of marriage. Which brings us to one final big question for you to really think about. This is a perfect stretch and challenge point. After looking at all this change and all this diversity, how true is it to say that the nuclear family, that first model we talked about, is still seen by most people as the ideal family, even if it's not the one they actually live in? That's something to really chew on.